You think isolation protects you, that it shields you from betrayal, judgment, and weakness. But the truth is, most men isolate themselves not to gain strength, but to escape their own insignificance, and that is the most dangerous form of weakness. In every age, the powerful retreat into solitude, but not as exiles, as architects. They withdraw, not to hide from the world, but to reshape it. The weak, however, mistake silence for wisdom and loneliness for strength. They isolate themselves in bitterness, not strategy. Their solitude becomes a cage, not a fortress. Understand this: isolation is not the enemy. Ignorant isolation is. To detach without purpose is to decay in the shadows. To detach with purpose is to see the world more clearly than those blinded by the noise of others. This video is not about being alone. It's about mastering the art of aloneness, the way rulers, thinkers, and predators of power have done for centuries. You think retreat is weakness, that to step back is to lose ground. But in truth, retreat, when deliberate, is the purest expression of control. Ask yourself, when the hunter disappears from sight, does the prey relax, or does it begin to fear what it cannot see? The powerful understand this. They do not vanish because they are defeated. They vanish to choose when to strike. Throughout history, every master of influence has known the art of strategic retreat. Caesar withdrew from Rome to let chaos consume his enemies. Napoleon retreated from Moscow, but only after draining the Russians of their strength. Even the cunning princes of Florence would feign retreat, allowing rivals to overextend, reveal their greed, and fall by their own ambition. Isolation in its highest form is not running away. It is stepping outside the noise to sharpen the blade of perception. Look around you. The modern world worships constant movement. Posting, performing, proving. People fear stillness because it forces them to confront the truth. Most of what they do is meaningless performance for invisible spectators. When you retreat, you stop performing. You begin to see. You see how people move in patterns, how words are rarely honest, how alliances shift like shadows at dusk. You see how easily the crowd confuses noise for wisdom. In solitude, your mind becomes a mirror, cold, unforgiving, reflective. Every weakness you ignored now stands in front of you. Most cannot bear this sight. They flee their own reflection, but the strategist does not flee. He studies it. He reshapes himself. You must understand, power is not gained through constant action. It is gained through precise action, and precision demands distance. Even in warfare, generals build victory in silence. The wise commander retreats not to surrender, but to reposition, to gather intelligence, to strike where the enemy least expects. So too must you. When you pull back from people, from the noise, from constant validation, you begin to gather information. Who notices your absence? Who panics? Who grows bold when you're gone? That, my friend, is your map of human nature. The reaction to your retreat exposes more truth than any conversation ever could. Isolation becomes your laboratory. You study loyalty, insecurity, hunger for attention. You learn that silence provokes confession. That distance makes others reveal themselves more than your presence ever could. Consider this: a manipulator who never retreats is easy to read. Constant movement betrays intention. But a man who can vanish, who can hold his silence like a weapon, becomes a mystery. And mystery is the foundation of power. Because what is feared more, the sword you see or the one hidden in the dark? The tragedy of most men is that they isolate impulsively. Out of anger, rejection, or exhaustion, they retreat emotionally, but not strategically. They close the door without a plan. They confuse running away with recharging. Their isolation becomes stagnation, no insight, no growth, only decay. True retreat is surgical, calculated. You withdraw not to heal, but to prepare. You turn solitude into structure. Each moment alone becomes an act of refinement, sharpening thought, mastering emotion, purging weakness. When done correctly, isolation transforms you from reactive to deliberate, from emotional to analytical, from servant to sovereign. The great strategist isolates to observe the board, not to abandon it. This is the paradox. To dominate the social world, you must first step outside it. Only from distance can you see how people truly move. their fears, their insecurities, their desperate hunger for approval. And once you see it, you can control it. There's a reason rulers, philosophers, and conquerors all valued solitude. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations alone in the stillness of night. Leonardo da Vinci locked himself away to observe nature in silence. Even the cruelest princes learned that to rule minds, one must first rule one's own. Retreat, then, is not an escape from battle. It is the drawing of breath before the kill. But make no mistake, retreat too long and your power fades. The blade rusts. The world forgets. Strategic isolation is not about vanishing forever. It is about choosing when and how to reappear. You retreat to build advantage, not to disappear. So when you step back from the noise, do it with intent. Map the terrain. Study your enemies. Reforge your mind into a weapon so precise that when you return, the world doesn't recognize the creature that emerged from silence. Because when the wise return from retreat, they don't rejoin the crowd. They rule it. And that is where true isolation ends and domination begins. But there's a danger ahead, something darker than solitude itself. It's the illusion of isolation disguised as self-care, a trap that keeps men weak, complacent, and comfortably powerless. We'll expose that next. You tell yourself you're taking time to heal, to rest, to find peace. But look closer. What you call peace is often just avoidance, wrapped in soft language. Modern isolation is not strength. It's sedation. A tranquil prison designed to keep you from confronting what truly hurts. When a man says he's working on himself, he often means he's hiding from the world that exposed his weakness. The enemy he's running from isn't out there, it's within. The ancient rulers understood this paradox. When a prince retreated from the court, he did not seek comfort, he sought clarity. He didn't light candles or whisper affirmations. He studied maps, read reports, planned vengeance. His solitude was filled with intent, not emotion. You, however, live in an age that has glorified emotional retreat. You are told to disconnect, to take time for yourself, to protect your energy. But these phrases are not born from power. They are born from fatigue, from a culture of overstimulation and spiritual fragility. So ask yourself, are you isolating to rebuild or to avoid the pain of rebuilding? There's a difference between recovery and retreat. Recovery sharpens. Retreat without purpose dulls. Psychologically, the mind craves comfort over confrontation. When you withdraw into self-care without direction, your brain rewards you with a temporary illusion of control. You feel calm. You feel safe. But safety is not strength, it's stagnation disguised as serenity. Consider the monk who spends years in silence, yet emerges no wiser, only detached. Compare him to the strategist who spends 1 year in isolation crafting a plan that alters history. Both were alone, but only one used solitude as a weapon. That's the dividing line between weakness and mastery. In truth, many people don't want transformation. They want anesthesia. They want to feel like they're growing, not do what growth demands. So they meditate without reflection. They journal without confrontation. They disconnect without strategy. This is the great lie of modern solitude. It teaches you to be comfortable, not formidable. Comfort is the silent killer of potential. It tells you you're making progress while you're quietly dissolving into irrelevance. Think of power as a fire. Without fuel, new ideas, challenges, enemies, it flickers out. And yet so many isolate themselves from the very friction that would make them burn brighter. Do you understand what this means? That your comfort is not your ally, it's your captor. Every time you avoid the world to protect your peace, you surrender a fragment of your power to those unafraid to act. While you retreat into calmness, others sharpen their ambition. While you silence your thoughts, others weaponize theirs. And when you finally emerge, you realize the game moved on without you. The powerful don't isolate to feel better. They isolate to see better. When Caesar faced betrayal, he didn't seek therapy. He watched. He learned who whispered in shadows. He studied the nature of loyalty. His isolation wasn't about peace. It was about positioning. That's the purpose of solitude in the mind of a ruler, strategic observation. But most men isolate to escape confrontation. With others, with the world, with their own reflection. They fear being exposed as unprepared, so they call their retreat healing. They numb their fear with stillness and mistake paralysis for peace. Tell me, what good is peace if it makes you powerless? Power, by its nature, is restless. It cannot be fully still. Even in silence it moves, calculates, plans, evolves. But when you embrace the illusion of self-care solitude, you suspend movement. You trade strategy for sedation. And slowly, your solitude turns against you. It becomes echo, not clarity. You start believing your own comfort-driven justifications. I don't need anyone. I'm better alone. The world doesn't deserve me. This is not self-mastery. It's self-deception. Isolation without confrontation breeds delusion. You start mistaking inaction for wisdom. You stop testing your strength. And a man untested is a man unknown, even to himself. Remember, this solitude should sharpen your senses, not soften them. When you emerge from isolation, the world should feel your return. Your thoughts should cut cleaner. Your actions should disturb the stagnant. That's how you know your solitude was strategic, not sentimental. The illusion of self-care solitude, then, is the comfort that kills your edge. It promises renewal, but delivers decay. It keeps you safe, silent, unthreatening. And in a world where attention is power, the silent are erased. So I ask you, will your isolation make you invisible or invincible? 'Cause next, we enter the realm where disappearance itself becomes a weapon. Where your absence terrifies more than your presence ever could. Where mystery becomes your mask, and silence your most dangerous form of control. What people cannot see, they invent. And what they invent they fear, desire, or envy. That is the essence of controlled mystery. Power through uncertainty. You must understand the human mind hates the unknown. It will create stories to fill silence, motives to fill absence, and monsters to fill the dark. The wise man knows this weakness and turns it into influence. When you vanish, people talk. When you reveal nothing, they imagine everything. And imagination is a far stronger chain than truth. In politics, in love, in business, visibility is vulnerability. The more you explain, the less they respect you. The more predictable you are, the less power you hold. Look at the great rulers of history. They never revealed the full map of their mind. Julius Caesar smiled even when he planned betrayal. Elizabeth I surrounded herself with suitors and spies, yet no one could ever claim to know her. Napoleon never allowed his soldiers to see exhaustion, only calculated bursts of passion. These figures ruled perception. They understood that mystery is not a wall. It is a mirror. It reflects back whatever others most want or most fear. Now look at yourself. You live in an age that worships exposure. Every thought is shared, every emotion broadcast. People reveal their fears, their routines, their failures, hoping transparency will bring connection. But the more you reveal, the less they value you. Why? Because mystery breeds value. Scarcity commands attention. Uncertainty provokes obsession. When others cannot fully grasp you, they pursue you. They analyze your silence, your pauses, your absence, trying to decode meaning that may not even exist. That is control. The powerful do not chase attention. They ration it. They let curiosity do the work. Think of the lion in the tall grass. You never see it, but you feel it. Its absence commands more fear than its presence ever could. Controlled mystery is not deception. It is strategy. It's the art of saying less, revealing less, and letting others build your legend for you. Ask yourself, how much do you reveal when you speak? Do you explain every motive? Do you justify every choice? Do you defend yourself when accused? Fools defend. The powerful let silence accuse the accuser. When you learn to control your mystery, you shift the balance of curiosity. People start wondering what you know, what you think, what you're planning. And that speculation becomes your armor. In psychology, this is known as information asymmetry. The one who knows more and reveals less always has the upper hand. It creates tension, and tension breeds influence. A mysterious person becomes a projection screen. Others paint their fantasies, fears, and respect onto them. You don't have to be extraordinary. You only have to be unclear. But be warned, mystery without control becomes chaos. You must design it, not drown in it. Too much secrecy breeds suspicion. Too little ruins the illusion. The goal is not to vanish completely. It's to be partially visible. Like the moon, you show just enough light to remind the world you're there, but never enough to be fully known. Even in relationships, mystery holds power. When you are too available, your value decays. But when your presence is rare, every word, every gesture gains weight. The other begins to crave your attention, to chase your approval. You no longer compete for interest. You command it. And that is the foundation of influence, not being wanted, but being wondered about. There's a psychological principle here. Ambiguity triggers obsession. The uncertain mind replays events, analyzes every signal, fills every silence. It cannot rest until it resolves the unknown. So by remaining slightly out of reach, you make others do the work of deepening their own attachment to you. Think of how a powerful leader walks into a room. Measured pace, calm eyes, no unnecessary words. People fill the silence with their own reverence. They sense gravity, though he has said nothing. That aura is not born from what he reveals, but what he withholds. Mystery magnifies presence. It transforms ordinary men into enigmas. And enigmas, by nature, cannot be ignored. But mystery must be built on substance. You cannot be hollow and hidden. A silent fool is still a fool. Only knowledge, strategy, and purpose make your silence meaningful. When your inner world is rich, your outer restraint becomes power. When your inner world is empty, your silence exposes weakness. So cultivate depth. Then control exposure. Let others speak. Let them overshare, over-explain, over-promise. And while they reveal their hand, you keep your cards close, smiling, listening, letting curiosity tighten its invisible grip. That's how you command without demanding. How you dominate without speaking. How your absence becomes louder than their noise. Because mystery is not about hiding. It's about forcing the world to wonder, and in that wonder lies control. But control can evolve into something far more dangerous. When mystery becomes manipulation, and silence becomes psychological warfare. Isolation is not always about distance. Sometimes it's a weapon. A silent strike against the minds of others. You see, the moment you withdraw your presence, people begin to feel your power. Absence creates anxiety. Silence breeds speculation, and speculation is the beginning of control. Most think influence comes from speech, from persuasion, from being visible. But true manipulators know, control often comes from withdrawal. When you remove yourself, others are forced to fill the void. They wonder what you're thinking, where you've gone, whether they've done something wrong. You say nothing, and yet their minds echo with your name. That is psychological warfare in its purest form. Throughout history, rulers have used isolation to dominate. Kings exiled rivals not only to remove them, but to drive them mad with irrelevance. Julius Caesar once ignored an entire faction of senators, not by force, but by silence. They grew desperate for his attention, mistaking neglect for punishment, until they destroyed themselves in their attempts to win back his favor. Even in the courts of Renaissance Italy, isolation was more feared than execution. Death made a man a martyr. Isolation made him forgotten. And there lies the cruel brilliance of psychological isolation. It makes others dependent on your acknowledgement for their sense of existence. Think about your own life. When you suddenly pull back from a friend, from a lover, from a colleague, how quickly do they notice? How quickly do they panic? They replay every interaction, searching for the cause of your withdrawal. They try to fix what may not even be broken. You've said nothing, but they've handed you their mind. The human brain is addicted to patterns. When those patterns break, when your response disappears, it triggers discomfort, uncertainty, even guilt. People begin negotiating with ghosts. That is the essence of psychological warfare, controlling others by making them fight battles that exist only in their own heads. But this is not cruelty for its own sake. It's strategy. Every great manipulator knows when to step back to amplify his influence. When you are always present, your power is diluted. When you become scarce, your presence becomes precious. silence magnifies significance. The powerful understand this instinctively. They do not respond immediately. They do not attend every gathering. They do not rush to explain themselves. They let absence work like gravity, pulling others in without effort. In modern life, this same principle applies. In relationships, the one who withdraws first gains the upper hand. Their silence becomes unbearable. The other starts chasing validation. In business, the executive who delays a reply controls the pace of negotiation. In politics, the leader who speaks last commands the narrative. Even on a psychological level, this manipulation is rooted in dominance hierarchies. The higher status individual always moves less, speaks less, and reveals less. Movement and reaction belong to the subordinate. So when you isolate yourself deliberately, you assert dominance. You force others into motion, emotional, mental, or social. While you remain still, stillness is power. But be careful. Uncontrolled isolation is chaos, calculated isolation is command. You must retreat strategically, not impulsively. Silence at the wrong moment weakens you. Silence at the right moment terrifies. Consider the cold ruler who withdraws affection from his court. The nobles grow desperate for approval, trying harder, revealing secrets, betraying each other. He watches in silence, learning more through absence than he ever could through inquiry. That is how distance becomes a tool of domination. Psychologically, when people crave your acknowledgement and receive none, they begin to internalize your imagined judgment. They censor themselves. They anticipate your reaction before you ever act. This is control at its most refined, your influence functioning without your effort. And that is the ultimate goal, to occupy the minds of others while remaining entirely out of reach. But isolation also serves another purpose. It preserves your emotional leverage. Each time you detach, you observe without bias. You see who crumbles under pressure, who adapts, who rebels. You see the invisible strings that tie people to your attention. From that observation, you learn who depends on you and who must be eliminated. Make no mistake, strategic isolation is a weapon forged from restraint. It demands patience, precision, and an indifference to being misunderstood. The weak rush to explain their silence. The powerful let it breed mystery and fear. So the next time you retreat, do it with purpose. Do not announce it. Do not justify it. Simply vanish and watch who breaks first, because the one who breaks reveals where the power truly lies. But there's another layer, darker still. The rebirth that follows isolation. The transformation of silence into creation, where solitude stops being a weapon against others and becomes the forge of your next empire. Isolation is only the first act. The second act, the return, is where legends are born. You do not retreat to disappear. You retreat to rebuild, to sharpen, to rewrite the world that once ignored you. Most men vanish and never return. They rot in silence, mistaking comfort for transformation. But the strategist, the architect, withdraws to construct something greater than himself. When you return, you must return as a different creature, not louder but heavier, not desperate to be seen but impossible to ignore. History remembers not the ones who stayed in exile, but those who re-emerged with purpose. Consider the exiled princes of Florence. Men stripped of their titles, forgotten by their courts. Most spent their isolation lamenting the past. But a few, very few, used it to build networks, study enemies, and prepare their resurgence. When they returned, they did not come back seeking forgiveness. They came back with plans. Even Caesar, when driven from Rome, did not retreat in defeat. He raised an army in the shadows, learned his enemies' weaknesses, and returned across the Rubicon with a single message to the world: I am inevitable. That is the essence of the architect's return. Calculated inevitability. You don't emerge from isolation hoping for acceptance. You emerge prepared to reshape the hierarchy that exiled you. The weak isolate to escape. The powerful isolate to evolve. Ask yourself when you vanish, what are you building in the dark? What new edge are you forging while the world forgets your name? Because make no mistake, the world will forget you, and that is your greatest advantage. They lower their guard. They stop watching. They stop fearing. Until one day, you return, not as the person they left behind, but as the architect of their new reality. Psychologically, this transformation is not external. It begins within. Solitude is not just about planning, it's about purification. Every ambition is tested, every insecurity exposed, every weakness stripped away. When you return, your presence must feel unnatural, even to those who once knew you. They should look into your eyes and sense something colder, more precise, more dangerous. That is the aura of rebirth, the kind that silence can create only when paired with discipline. The danger, of course, lies in emerging too soon. Most people grow restless in isolation. They rush their transformation. They come back half-formed, still needing validation, still chained to emotion, and so they fall again. The architect, however, returns only when ready, when every weapon is sharpened, every plan calculated, every emotion contained. He does not knock on the door he once left. He builds a new one, and forces the world to walk through his. Even in modern life, this principle holds. In business, the visionary who disappears to study markets, refine skills, and quietly build momentum returns with an innovation that dismantles entire industries. In relationships, the person who detaches to rebuild confidence and value reappears, no longer seeking attention, but commanding it effortlessly. Reinvention is not cosmetic, it is strategic. It's not about changing how you look, but changing how you are perceived. And perception, as you've learned, is the currency of power. When you return, don't explain where you've been. Let mystery surround your absence. Let your results speak before your words do. The more others must guess, the more authority you command. In the art of power, silence is forgotten only until it speaks again. And when it does, the world listens differently. Remember, absence is only powerful if it leads to transformation. The architect's return is never accidental. It is timed, rehearsed, deliberate. Every step, every word, every appearance serves a purpose. He no longer plays by the rules of the world. He writes them. That is why the return must feel like a revelation, not a re-entry. The man who once sought a place now builds his own throne. The student becomes the strategist. The outsider becomes the orbit others revolve around. Your time in isolation was the forge. Your return is the firestorm. You will not come back begging for acknowledgement. You will come back commanding allegiance. But to do that, you must master the final art, the balance between distance and dominance. How to stay visible without being exposed. How to hold power without revealing its weight. Because once you return, every eye will be on you. Every ally will test you. Every enemy will wait for your first mistake. And that is where most men lose what they built in the dark. They forget that returning with power requires something colder than ambition. Control. Control of self. Control of perception. Control of timing. Without it, your rise collapses into spectacle. With it, you ascend into myth. The return of the architect is not the end of isolation. It is the beginning of empire. And now that you've stepped back into the light, the only question left is, can you rule it? Power is not loud. It moves in silence. You do not control people by force. You control them by expectation. By letting them believe they act freely. When every choice they make serves your design. Influence, at its highest form, is invisible. The moment they realize they're being controlled, the spell is broken. So you rule not with commands, but with carefully placed silences, with presence that feels like absence, an absence that feels like power. Those who master this art never need to demand obedience. People give it willingly, even gratefully. Ask yourself, how many already move according to your will without knowing it? And how many control you, while you mistake it for love, loyalty, or respect? The difference between master and pawn is awareness. Now you know. If you found truth in this darkness, leave your thoughts below. Subscribe for more Machiavellian strategies of power and human psychology. And share this with those who still think control comes from shouting. Let them learn real power whispers.